This is episode number 22 of the Big Web Show. This is a live talk show about the web and the future of web publishing. It's hosted by Jeffrey Zeldman and Dan Benjamin. That's me. This episode is sponsored by the .tv domain name. The .tv domain name is the perfect preferred destination for video content. With your own .tv domain name, you can amplify and extend your own conversation and let the world know you mean business about video. So if your website has a play button like ours does, it's made for a .tv domain name. Get yours today. GetSeenOn.tv/bigweb. And, of course, by MailChimp, powerful email marketing. Build and manage your email lists, design killer HTML email campaigns, and send emails with confidence. Their free account has just been increased big time. You can now store up to 1,000 subscribers and send up to 6,000 emails a month. That's big. And you can check them out at MailChimp.com/5x5. Special deals just for Big Web Show listeners. Jeffrey Zeldman, how are you today?
I had a dream about a MailChimp.
Have you been practicing that?
No, I didn't. It came to me.
Nice.
Wow. How are you?
Doing everything is going swimmingly here. You know, the Phillies are where they need to be right about now, and I'm happy about that. It's a nice time of year, but who cares about me? Let's talk about our guest. We've got one of the most popular web designers in the world right now. I would think
this guy is
safe to say, right?
Wow,
if
that's
true.
It's true.
I think of Prince, or I mean, you know. A multi-talent, right? Like there are people who are fantastic singers or great songwriters or good songwriter performers, and then there's Prince, and he just does anything, right?
I love Prince.
If you handed him a trumpet, he'd do something with it. I mean,
right.
There's nothing he can't do, and that's how I think about Dan Cederholm, our guest today.
Well, that's too kind of you. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Dan most recently is the co-founder and designer of Dribbble.
Yes.
With 3 Bs, right?
3 Bs. Yep.
So, like, extra letters is the new missing.
It is. I mean, so we're limited in terms of domain names and what we can do, and adding letters. You can take away letters, and or you can add them. So we decided to add one.
Was Dribble? I have never checked, but was Dribble with 2 Bs taken already? Did someone have a service?
That's a good question. I assume we checked that initially, but I think so. Yeah, I think. And actually, it's annoying to tell somebody the URL, but it's actually kind of fun as an extra letter. Some people are annoyed by it, but it seems to be a little bit of a trend, as you said. Found and
right.
a whole host of other sites, but literally, it comes down to the domain name and. A lazy way of doing that is adding a letter, and that seems to help with trademarking and sort of registering your company as well.
Right. Have you done
just
that?
add a letter to it.
Have you trademarked the word Dribble? Have you trademarked that mark?
Yeah, we haven't trademarked, but we have. We're an LLC, a Massachusetts LLC. So, I guess in Massachusetts, adding an extra B is okay.
But you didn't, for the record, Dan, you didn't pick the name arbitrarily. There's a kind of a whole theme behind it, and there's, I'm sure that there are still some people who are on the periphery who don't know what Dribble is, and it's really, really cool. Maybe you can kind of briefly tell them what it is and your inspiration, because I think a lot of people would love to hear that.
Yeah, totally. And actually, a good explanation kind of goes along with the name. So the name Dribble went along with sort of bouncing ideas as designers and leaking work. So Dribble sort of helps both of those. So
Dribble like
Dribble
basketball, but also Dribble like...
Yeah. Yes.
You have 2 young children, I believe.
Yes. 2 young kids. Yep. 4.5 and 2.
When they're first learning to eat,
they do a lot of dribbling.
It takes all your human endurance not to just run screaming from the room, or
yes, it does. I guess that was probably an inspiration too. Dribbling, baby food dribbling down the chin of.
But I think what you were saying when you say dribbling, you were talking more about the fact that people can post pictures, little snippets, screenshots. They're not whole screenshots. It's not the whole screen, but it's just a little. It's a corner of a logo or an edge of something or a hint at what they're working on.
And dribs and drabs.
Right. So
dribs and drabs.
How did you get the idea to do that? Why just the limited subset of what people are working on instead of the whole deal?
Well, a lot of you would probably remember Cameron Mall back in, I think, it was like 2004 probably. Ran a thing called Screen Grab Confab on his blog, sort of asking people to post screenshots of what they're doing. And I think I'm just making a guess here, but the column width of his blog at the time was a certain dimension. You can only fit a certain size screenshot in there, and so that led to sort of creatively cropping what you're doing. And so that was definitely an inspiration, going way back then. And then, I think I remember being at the South by Southwest hallway, literally, several years ago, thinking, all we do when we connect with each other is ask, what are you working on? You must hear that all the time. What are you working on? What are you working on? And sometimes you can't exactly tell people what you're working on. Maybe something it's not finished yet, or it's sort of a secret client thing, or you're just in progress. But so I always love the idea of being able to peek over the shoulder of friends and colleagues, and just to see something, a little snippet of what they're doing. Nice. To see what's coming up, and
without violating the privacy of the client.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that's an important point, because we get a lot of criticism in terms of people shouldn't be uploading stuff that's under NDA or violating client secrecy stuff. But I think part of it comes back to the creative crop. You can get around a little bit of that. Some stuff you wouldn't be able to upload, but you can get around the secrecy stuff by creatively cropping something, and you have a limited amount of space to do so. So it was a way of seeing something from your friends and colleagues that you wouldn't see otherwise, and being able to maybe peek over the shoulder of designers, and that was sort of the reason for building it. And then it's sort of evolved since then. Adding features and the social aspect of it, and being able to connect with designers and discovering new designers just by little snippets of their work. That's been fascinating, and it's really sort of evolved. It's grown and evolved, and it's become this sort of big focus for me and for Rich Thornett, the developer. So,
how did you meet with Rich, and how does that collaboration work?
Yeah, that's a funny story, because we're neighbors essentially. I can see Rich's back door from my front door, and our wives are friends, and we both have two kids that are around the same age, and they're friends, and Rich was working at a place called Patients Like Me in Boston, or Cambridge, sorry, which is sort of a social health startup, and at the time, I think I sort of had the name Dribble and a rough idea of maybe how it could work, and he was sharing some office space with me at the time. I said, "Hey, let me chip in on this. Let's do this. Let's build this together." So that's how it started, and it was sort of a nights and weekends thing for Rich for a long time, while we sort of built out the beta and got the first something online that people could use, and then we sent people invites. I sent T-shirts and invite cards to sort of people I knew that I wanted to see. It was sort of selfish in a way. I sent them to people that I wanted to see what they were working on. So we did that as sort of a first wave of a private beta, and all the while, Rich is doing this sort of in conjunction with a full-time job. So that was difficult, but so we go forward. We've got a private beta going. A lot of people are digging it. I think a downside was that people assumed it was a private social network that was never going to be public.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would they assume that?
Well, that might have been partly our fault in not communicating that. Look, we're private because it's in beta, and we want to iron things out. and you guys are helping immensely with feedback and all that. But I think when it came time, oh sorry,
I was just going to say, I would think, obviously, what happened, whatever it was, but I would think that since you mostly invited web designers who may have had experience themselves with betas, I would think everyone kind of knows that's the deal, that you start working on something, you're seeding the content, and then eventually it goes public. I mean, that goes back to the mid-'90s.
Yeah, I think so too, and maybe that's why we didn't make it really clear, that hey, we're only private for a temporary time, and then we want to open this up publicly so that people can see all this good stuff. And creating a private forum is not really what we wanted to do from the outset.
Right.
But I think that might have been a surprise to some people when we came out and said we're gonna go public. You might want to remove stuff that is sensitive in case you did upload something sensitive, and so there was it was an interesting period when we went publicly viewable. It's still invite only, but when we went publicly viewable, there was a little bit of a transition period. And actually, after that happened, everyone's happy, and everyone sort of gets the fact that there's a lot of power in being able to share what you're working on and show your process as a designer, sort of a different side of you than just your portfolio. And people are connecting to each other in different ways that way, and getting leads from potential employers and stuff through Dribble, because they can see a different side of it too.
I think it's kind of a better way because the focus on the details is just really nice. Yeah. There's all kinds of design work going on all over that sometimes you get overwhelmed by all the stuff you see, and you don't appreciate the thought and care that went into, a small detail. And you've had over 5 billion pixels dribbled so far, I see, which means that you're calculating if each 400 by 300 is what, 12 million, 120,000 pixels?
Yeah, 120,000 pixels. Yeah.
Right. So
so
your
Rich
partner built a little. Yeah, Rich built a little.
Rich is amazing, and he's a wonderful developer, and not just developer as well. I mean, we're co-founders of this thing, and he has a lot of input on product design. And actually, he's the full-time employee right now. I'm sort of a part-time employee. So he
and at some point although you just started to make this cool thing, you realized, well, we're going to put a lot of work into this, so maybe we should find some way to get some money, to help our work and cover the expenses and all that. So you started selling your own ads. I see ads by Dribbble, and now I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the balance between. I mean, because every time I post something at Dribbble, inevitably, like 20 people will say, "Give me an invite," like as if I have an endless supply. And even though I don't know who you are and I've never seen your work, I'm going to do that. Which,
And I'll add to that, Dan. I'm not really very much of a designer at all, and I think I was working on one of the forms for the 5x5 CMS. I posted that and instantly got like 50 emails. Instantaneously, like I see you finally got invited to Dribbble. Can you please invite me? And I actually have had an account for a long time. I've just been lurking. And why stay invite only? I don't know, Jeffrey, if that's where you were going.
What I want to know, I wanted to, in a way, yes. What I wanted to talk about, what I wanted Dan to talk about, was so there's this interesting tension to me between, on the one hand, you're advertising, which means Web 1.0 style, you want eyeballs, right? Because for an advertiser, it's like, I want millions of people on this site, so it shouldn't be invite only. On the other hand, for an advertiser, you're really selling influence. I mean, that's how the DEC network works. And you want really qualified people. That's the marketing term. It doesn't mean qualified as designers or qualified human beings. It just means the people who will see the ad are, well, everyone listening knows what it means. It means people who see the ad might actually be interested in the ad. So, so that's where the recommendation system, having someone say, well, I've got 5 friends who are designers that I think are good, so I'll invite them. Mm-hmm. Although it could seem from the outside elitist, and it might seem not conducive to selling ads, it actually seems like a very smart way to maintain the quality of the community and monetize in an intelligent way. Your thoughts?
I'm glad you see it that way in terms of being a positive, because we have certainly got a lot of flack for it appearing like Dribbble is this elitist community of designers, which was not never the goal, and I don't see it that way. You know, a lot of the invite system, or why the invite system was in place in the first place, was that you know, Rich is working full time on it now, but he wasn't initially when we first went public, and we have massive scaling issues already. You know, right off the bat, like from sort of day one of being public, we had these large scaling issues to deal with. So I think if we open the floodgates, a lot of different things would happen. First of all, the quality of the shots would go down. Suddenly we'd have a lot of different scaling issues to deal with, essentially with one person having to deal with it all. So the invite process for us was great because we could sort of keep track, grow it on our own time, but also grow it from the community. So the community decides who comes in.
Right.
They're given invites sort of at random times, and we haven't given a lot of invites out, but we do it sort of regularly so that you can hopefully get your friends in, or someone you think is a good designer that you want to see their process. You know, so it has been very successful up to this point. You're right in that it's sort of you know, we're selling ads and then we're trying to keep the user base low,
small,
right, small, and those kind of go against each other. But luckily, there are certain shots become extremely popular and they're publicly viewable, and it generates an enormous amount of traffic.
Right.
Not just for people that are uploading, but also for people that are watching. You know, they're spectating essentially. That maybe aren't designers, but they appreciate design, or they're looking for designers, or they work with designers, or they're hiring designers, or and that kind of thing. So those are the people that are also coming to Dribbble as well.
Do you and Rich ever just like sort of look? I mean, the quality, the sort of the feeling that there's like endless design inspiration at this website, that I can just keep paging through and paging through and paging through, and just seeing wonderful stuff that I wish I had done.
Yeah.
Do you and Rich ever like go like, wow, what have we done? Like, what have we made here? This is incredible. Do you ever just feel like, sort of,
oh yeah, every day. So every day, I think both of us are like, oh my God, is everyone just going to leave tomorrow and not upload anything? And we come in the morning and we look at the streams, we look at everyone's shots, we scour the site. We spend a lot of time on the site looking at work, and I'm continually amazed. Even every time we send out more invites, I'm continually amazed at the work that's being uploaded. And just sort of the amazing quality of creativity that's out there. And I think that's probably the biggest positive for me so far with this is actually discovering a lot of people that I didn't know about before Dribbble.
Yes.
And sort of and getting to know them, and getting to know like how they create and the style they use, and even a little bit about their process, and seeing how they give feedback to other people, or how they accept feedback from other people. And there's a ton to be gained, and the quality has remained unbelievably high, and that is something that I'm amazed about, and almost in a depressing way, right? And we see that a lot too on Twitter. Like I go to Dribbble when I get depressed. Yeah.
I was going to say that the longer I spend on a site like Dribbble, the more I feel like a talentless hack who should go sell pencils in a train station.
I've got a question for you, Dan, that came in from the chat room right at the top of the show. They were saying they were wondering how long it took from the initial, you know, the first design, the first line of code when you guys actively started working on this, to when you were actually ready to launch it or invite the very first person.
Right.
What was that process like, and how long?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably pretty long, to be honest. Because we were working out a lot of things, and we even though the site is very simple at what it does and the functionality, I mean, you're just uploading small screenshots, but there was a lot of decisions to make, and a lot of keeping it simple. We had a whole bunch of different directions that we went, and luckily, you know, it's a Ruby on Rails app, and we're working iteratively, as you know, Dan. It's awesome to work in a small team like that, because you can throw away, you can add things quickly, you can throw them away, so the initial time, Because we were juggling a whole bunch of other things, you know, it might have taken 6 months, probably, really, just to sort of to hammer it out. And then
From sketches to
yeah,
a working prototype.
yeah, basically a working prototype in Rails, you know, locally. And then it came time. So it was all stages. And then we got it up on a server, and we could see it, but no one else could. And then it came time to invite the first beta testers, and that's when we sent out these T-shirts to basically friends and colleagues that we knew that we wanted in there to see what they're working on and get their feedback. And so, and then from that point to when we launched it publicly, that was about I think I remember it being like a 9-month period even. So we're not talking about quick, you know, code quickly, get stuff out fast kind of thing. It did take a while, but I think a lot of that has to do with us being bootstrapped and sort of wanting to do it. We didn't want to do it the traditional startup route. That's just not us. I mean, I didn't want to get funding or something from somebody. It was something we wanted to build and we wanted people to use, but we didn't. We wanted to do it on our own time, and we weren't worried about competitiveness or anything. So.
Right.
Let me ask you both, really, because you both, I mean, you worked together creating Corked before this.
Right.
How do you, when you're working on something, because I struggle with this, when you're working on something that's going to take 6 months or a year, and it's coming together and it's so freaking cool, don't you have the desire to just like throw up in your studio, start uploading pictures to Flickr and going, you guys won't believe this cool thing we're coming out with in 6 months? Yeah. And I think you must have that impulse, because really that's what Dribble's about in a way. It's like, I can't show you this yet, but look how cool it is.
There's an element of this tease factor to it it can be incredibly frustrating, because you just want to see more of what the people are working on. It's almost cruel. It's like a cruel joke on all designers everywhere, or wannabe designers like me.
Yeah,
it is. I think that's what makes it addicting too. It's sort of I haven't gotten tired of you know, thumbing through shots from people, because it's easily digestible. You can just sort of, you know, but it's been to Jeffrey's point about wanting to stand up on your desk and shout that this is awesome, and that's been hard, because when we had the private beta going, it was awesome back then even, and but we really couldn't talk about it. I mean, everything was private. You couldn't link to anything unless you were a member. You know, you couldn't link to anything, and that's no fun. And I think this whole thing has been a really interesting sort of learning experience in terms of managing a community, and you know, being able to see unsolicited feedback through Twitter, for example, has been both amazing and disconcerting.
Because you see everything. And what have you learned?
What mistakes have we made? It's a good question. You know, we've really taken the slow approach, which I think is actually the right one for us. I guess, you know, the nice thing about going slow is that we probably have made a lot of mistakes, although they have been sort of small little mistakes that we sort of easily corrected. Whereas we've never sort of leapt and done something really, really kind of crazy and off the cuff. That would have been a more noticeable mistake, but we've sort of taken it very slow. And actually, you know, we should blog more. We should be more community involved. I think that would be kind of nice. That would maybe one mistake that we made, but that just comes down to time. We're both sort of strapped, and we're concentrated on we're prioritizing, and we're trying to get as much done as we can, or the more important things that we can.
Well, speaking of time.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Dan, I know I'm curious. I think a lot of people are. You know, this is not a full-time thing for you. It's full-time for Rich. How much of your time do you get to spend on this? Whether it's on a day or a week. How much are you half time? Are you quarter time?
Yeah, it's about half time right now. Although, you know, I mean, Rich has a lot. There's a lot more work on his shoulders right now. So it's good that he's full time. But I think just the monitoring of feedback alone and sort of the community support stuff is just immense, and we could definitely do a better job on that. But when I say halftime, but I'm also constantly, thanks to the iPhone and iPad and everything, I'm constantly sort of digesting what's going on, and I'm keeping a monitor of what's going on the site, and I'm keeping a monitor of going on with Twitter and support channels and stuff like that. So I'm doing a lot of consuming, and I think once we get a little more revenue and maybe I could do more time on this, then I can start sort of giving back more as well.
But you don't. A lot of people who create apps, and this is again not the first app you've created for the community. A lot of people who create apps, they see it as a way out of client services work, and that's not true for you. As my understanding is that you love client services work. You love being a hired gun. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. I think nothing has been sort of to the level that Dribbble has hit already. So I could see probably weaning off client services even more if the opportunity arises. But I do enjoy client services, and I think I enjoy them. And I think actually, Jeffrey, I remember you mentioning this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the nice thing, one of the nice things about client services is that when you're done, you're done. So you can put a lot of energy into this thing, and then when it's done, it's over, and you can sort of move on, and that's kind of nice, actually.
Well, yeah. So if sometimes you have an ongoing relationship with a client, and that's wonderful. But a lot of times they need help for a certain period. They need a big problem solved. You do that. They take some of your advice. They don't take some of your whatever. Then it becomes their thing again, and they move on. And it's like teaching college, and I imagine, and after they leave, now they can quote Chaucer, and then they go on and do whatever they're going to do, and they do the great stuff that they're going to do, and it's not your problem,
right? And then you start all over again.
You're not like, I mean, again, when we think about some of the first folks that we know, that mutual friends who started doing apps, they got out of client services as fast as they could. Like, wow, thank goodness I don't have to deal with those people again. And and I know that you really love working with different people, and as do I. It's really
I do. Part of it too, though, it is exciting. But part of it too is that I don't think nothing has been very lucrative in the past. So I may have created a bunch of things, but some of them might have been, just fun and to build, but not necessarily financially lucrative. So
tell us some of the other things for those who don't know.
Okay, the biggest one would probably be Corked that Dan and I made a few years ago. And
it's different now, though.
It is different now. The current site, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is different. It's like a blog now or something.
It's like it's like Gary kept the URL. Said, well, a lot of people who like wine are coming to this, but maybe I don't want to manage the same community site anymore, so I'll keep the URL and do something different with it.
That could be it. I would love to get his thoughts on that.
Well, you know what? He's going to be guest on this show not in too long of a time, so we'll ask him.
A couple weeks.
Dan, nail him down and
we'll figure out, because one of the when he took over the site, it sat for a while, and we didn't know what he was going to do with it. We were curious to find out. I think I was pretty curious, and but what else? So what else has been happened for you since Corked? What have you been working? Because this is the thing, you kind of pop up and you give these great talks, a lot of which I've heard and seen, and people I know really enjoy seeing you speak, and then you're kind of under the radar, and then here's Dribbble, and then you're kind of quiet again. What else are you doing? What are the other things that you've got going on?
So in addition to some client, like halftime client stuff, I'm wrapping up a book right now, actually, and for A Book Apart, and Jeffrey Zeldman, publisher.
Hello.
So,
yeah. So talk about that. What is that? What's up?
Yeah. So it's called CSS3 for web designers, and it's sort of a follow-up to Jeremy Keith's HTML for web designers. Although no one can really follow that up. That was just sort of a masterpiece.
You do a fine job. You do that is a masterpiece, but your book is fantastic too.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, but I'm excited about it. I'm fired up. We're we're sort of wrapping up editing, and
let's back up a little for people who don't know this. So Dan is a CSS expert and designer. He's like a double. There are a lot of people who are there are a few people in the world who are brilliant at CSS and okay designers, and there are a few people who are great designers and okay at CSS. And Dan's really good at both, really, really good at both, and a really good writer. You started with on your website like 10 years ago or something. You were writing what was it called? The standards quiz. This is where you started, really.
Sure. Yeah, that is the very beginning of sort of writing. They're called Simple Quiz.
Simple Quiz, and it was like, quiz. Which is a perfect for Simple Bits, of course, perfect brand extension. But it was like, I want to create a menu. How can I do this? And it sounds almost like I sometimes imagine Mr. Rogers doing the vocals, because it would be like, well, I could, but it was very good teaching. It was very simple teaching. It was like,
it could be on like Nick Jr. or something.
I could do this table, and that would have these advantages, and it would look like this, and what about that? Or I could do all these divs, and kind of like early Dreamweaver style. Or I could make a list. Maybe I should make the list, and a lot of people, I think, responded very positively to. A lot of people who weren't that interested in semantic markup and CSS got it when they saw that. Just in the same way Dave Shea's, magnificent CSS Zen Garden turned a lot of visual designers on. I think a lot of people who weren't paying that much attention when they saw Simple Quiz said, oh, now I get it. This is exciting and fun. And then, of course, you used that as you kind of took that quiz approach and wrote web standard solutions for the Friends of Ed.
Friends of Ed, yes, exactly. Yeah, that was sort of directly from those blog posts, that first book. And that was like a sort of a response from. There was a lot of talk at the time about being valid and valid markup and how important that was, and there wasn't a lot of talk about semantics and what semantic markup means. And that was sort of the goal, was just sort of, hey, look, there are 10 ways to solve this problem. Neither one of them are correct, but here's what happens if you use each one of them. And just sort of knowing those scenarios, I think, is part of what being a good web designer is, because there really is no one way to do anything, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just the way the web is. And if you're that type of person that likes to sort of bottle something up and like, I need one answer to this, and I need one way of doing it, you're going to be a frustrated web designer. It's just not the way it is.
Agreed. Dogma is not where it's at. Now, your next step was to write your next book for web designers, Bulletproof Web Design. You sort of answered the question. A lot of people would say, well, I'd love to use web standards and do all this advanced CSS stuff, but I have to support IE6 or IE55 or whatever, so I can't. And your answer to that, of course, is progressive enhancement. And so you wrote Bulletproof Web Design you use bulletproof as a phrase you came up with to basically say, you know what, you can do this advanced stuff and you can make your design still work in browsers that are less capable. And so there was a propaganda value, even though it was, again, a simple teaching book, and in that sense, not that different from other code design books that are like, here's how to code this, here's how you could code that, right? I mean, a lot of people write books like that, but again, yours was also advancing a point of view, which was, okay, so, and I think handcrafted CSS, I would just say that you upped the progressive enhancement quotient and upped the, again, another reason that I think your dribble took so long to come to fruition is that you're this New England crafts person who really likes to spend a lot of time going, I'm not sure if the corner's quite round enough yet, or I'm not, right?
Yeah,
okay,
so totally. Yeah.
And so now you're writing a book, I think, I hope, I believe, the book that you're writing now is like, okay, so web designers, you've known me and trusted me all this way as I've sort of helped us all, as we've all worked through these issues of how can I do good semantic markup and how can I do. So here's the next step. Now we have all this tremendous power coming out in CSS3, which most browsers support, but IE, even IE9 does, but older versions of IE don't. And so how can I understand this power? What trade-offs are there, and how can I design advanced, rich interfaces that work, that work fine, that take advantage of all the power, really, that HTML5 and CSS3 gives us, right? All the graphics in the browser, but at the same time works fine when someone doesn't quite have a browser that handles those things. Right? Is that an accurate?
That was the most accurate description I could ever imagine. That was perfect. Yeah, I think there's so much fun, exciting things in CSS3, and so you'd be hearing a lot like, I can't wait to use CSS3, but I can't right now. Especially with what the projects I'm working on, or my boss won't let me, or something, or whatever. So the goal of the book really is to say, look, there's a lot of CSS3 that works today, that does work, and you can use it today. And actually anyone can use it, provided you sort of use it in the right appropriate places. And so I'm focusing on the experience layer, which is like hovering and interacting and resizing and all that kind of stuff, as being a place where anyone, depending on no matter what project you're working on, you can add this in. And you can start playing with CSS or CSS3, and you can start learning this stuff, because the browsers are really pushing these specs along, and they're implementing via vendor prefixes and things. And so there's a lot we can use right now, and but there's also a lot of confusion about how we should use it, and so that's the goal of the book, is sort of to clear that up and explain, really dive right into examples on how I can add CSS3 to any site, and in doing so in a way that degrades gracefully.
You're kind of at war with Andy Clark, or he's declared war, and you would more be an accurate way to say that.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, no, I think Andy's. I think we're actually coming from similar places. I think it's not as combative as Andy is describing it. Essentially, he's sort of against progressive enhancement in terms of using CSS3, and should work from sort of design for the best possible experience first, and then design other experiences for browsers that don't support CSS3. I mean, in a way, that's sort of what progressive enhancement is, I think, because I may not be designing physically the greatest experience in CSS3, but I might, in my mind, know that these are things I'm going to add after the fact that don't work in these browsers, but I understand that going into it. And I think that understanding is important, right? So that's part of why the book's there, is supposed to sort of arm you with the properties that do work today and how to use them, so that you can begin to fold this stuff into your current work. So I don't think we're coming from completely different planets, Andy and I. And I think, I don't think we're coming from two different.
Well, it's partly a semantic difference, but it also means he might end up designing 4 completely different looking sites in an extreme case, and you will design one site that your analogy is, the TV show that works on a 4:3 TV, and on a color, black and white, in a color TV, and on a widescreen TV, but it's a slightly different it's a slightly different experience of that same design on all three.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think I like that analogy. I mean, you can watch a color program on a black and white TV, and it still works, right? It's the same program, same content. The experience of it is a little different, or a little better, depending on the capability of the device. I mean, that's progressive enhancement, really. So which I think is good. And it might be that I'm more lazy too. Like instead of creating separate experiences for all the browsers, I'm really thinking about maybe one jacked up experience for browsers that, geez, I can't believe I said that, but for browsers that support CSS3 fully, whereas you're going to get a very similar experience, and you're not going to really know what you're missing if you don't have those extra things in it. So I like that approach because it's pretty simple. And if you're designing in the browser, it's easy to relay that to clients too.
Do you design in the browser now, or do you start in Photoshop and then what do you do?
Yeah, it's sort of a hybrid that I've always done, and that is I might start in Photoshop, with not a lot of detail, and then I might start in code. I'll start in code relatively early, and
you do the detail in code.
Yeah, I do the detail in code, and then I might take a screen grab of where I'm at, bring that into Photoshop, and refine even more, add more detail. If I'm happy with that, then I'll actually make it live in code. So it's a little bit of a back and forth, but it's just the way I've always done it.
I never asked this, but what tools do you use?
Oh, I use Photoshop, CS3, and I use Coda for coding, which I like. Xscope is really sort of indispensable for sort of checking, especially when you're designing in the browser. You can check sort of alignment of grids and dimensions of elements and stuff. It's fabulous. That's about
all
it.
Your stuff feels tight, like it was pixel designed, but you still use a lot of relative sizes, and your design is a little more fluid than that, but somehow you have the quality of the print-like quality of a more fixed width approach.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I think that's a compliment in that
I think so, yeah.
I think it's a compliment. I know it's a compliment.
It took a while, though. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I have always been a big sort of fan of using relative sizes for fonts and fluid layouts when it's appropriate. And but I still have. There's a side of me that likes that control, that sort of typical designer pixel control, and those are sort of at odds with each other. So the goal is to get a nice balance, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
One of the things that's always occurred to me working with you when we were working on Corked, and I think even you've developed it even more in Dribble, is that you have very much a visual language that you seem to establish. It's more than just having a theme that you use to design. It's that you almost create these little components, even if some of them are only implied, and you reuse them in a very consistent way, so that a site that you design, you can look at a website and you know almost instantaneously that's a Dan Serum design.
Absolutely.
So what is that intentional? Is that something that's a byproduct of the way that you work and think? However, having said that, Dan, it's not a one-trick pony. It's not that, oh, that's a Dan Cederholm design, you can just tell. It's like, right. It's totally different from this other one, but I still know that it's your work. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Thank you. I think that's a compliment too.
Very much a compliment.
Now I'm joking with you.
Yeah,
no. That's funny. I haven't really thought about that deeply in terms of if there's a process there where I'm trying to. I mean, I do consciously try to reuse things, and I think that it's funny. It goes back to CSS really in a way, because thinking about how efficient you can make your CSS. Oftentimes that thinking lends itself to the visual side as well. and I guess if you're a designer that thinks visually and how this is going to happen in reality in code, if you've got those two pieces and you're dealing with them, you're juggling them, then I think that's when that sort of reuse or themable quality to your design comes out, because it's a matter of it's a byproduct of that thinking, sort of the juggling of those two things.
Right.
That's my guess anyway. I'm not sure.
Are there questions from our?
Yeah, we do. We do have a few questions, and people they take it really personally if we don't ask their question. But
let's run along and try to get as many of them as we can.
Well, we'll do that. One is more comment. Carl Smith from Engine, he says that they have a new client who's asked them to use Dribbble as a teaser medium to build excitement for their redesign. And here's the question part. How do you feel about Dribbble being used to drive awareness for a client or project? I mean, a lot of our product, he says, a lot of people do the same thing with Twitter, but how do you feel about Dribbble being used that way?
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, I think actually that's one of the reasons we created it, quite honestly. And even going back to the name, so Dribbble in terms of leaking your work and sort of building. It's a big tease, like you said earlier, Dan. Like it's you're really teasing somebody because of the crop, and you're missing the context, which some people would criticize the site for. You don't have any context, so we're just looking at eye candy. And but I think for that type of thing, like building sort of excitement around something that you're redesigning that might not be out yet, I think that's a perfect application for Dribbble, because there's really, I mean, where else do you do that? You know, that's why it's different than a portfolio, which is static, and it's sort of more organic, and it's more alive, it's more real time, like Twitter. You know, it's a little bit more like. So yeah, I think it's great. I look forward to seeing it.
Here's another question. How do you feel about the impact Dribbble seems to have had on not only those directly involved, but also on the design community at large, as well as other communities, tech, business? And it's worth mentioning that while Dribbble is maybe closed for people to submit, it's invite only, anybody who wants can look at this. So it's having a wider effect. It's gone well beyond what just designers think about. Is that what you were hoping for? Or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are other sort of inspiration sites that might be closed that where no one can see the stuff. That was never our intention. I think that the exciting part of it is that people can see this stuff, and everyone can see it, and everyone can enjoy it, and everyone can get excited about what people are working on. And so the goal is to sort of just grow the quality of the community and keep that under wraps, and keep more people in there that can upload, that are doing good work and that people are excited about. But yeah, in terms of looking at it and viewing it, we sort of everyone can do that, and everyone can enjoy it. I think that's important.
You could really do the same thing for content strategy and marketing. You could do I don't know what it would be called, but where people get like 120 words, and it's their sales pitch or whatever it is, and they just show that without, and I'm sure that would be very popular and serve many similar needs too. But you don't seem to be the kind of guy that does extensions like. When the two Dans did Corked, you guys didn't go, this is great, now let's find people who like lunch and make a site called Lunched, and make a site for dieters called like Else.
We talked about it, not the
we did. Okay. We actually did. We had some plans to just as you said, you could apply like that type of community to all sorts of things related to.
You didn't do it. Why? Do you not, so you do only want to create communities that you want to be a member of? You don't want to just create communities as just a money making venture?
Well, I think it's probably the latter, really. I mean, anyone can try to create a community about anything, but I think it's important to be passionate about what it is, have the people working behind it be passionate about what it is.
Or it won't be very good, right?
No,
or,
it won't. It won't. It just won't. It won't be authentic. It won't be genuine. So
it's like starting a Facebook group that you then never do anything with, or starting a Flickr group that you don't do anything with, or a Ning social network that you don't do anything with.
Oh,
it's like
that's a good analogy, because I mean, look at Facebook. Just sort of adds. They want to be sort of everything for everybody. Like they'll add photos, and then they'll add statuses, and then they'll add. You know, I don't. That's. It just dilutes the community. I mean, in their case, they're doing okay, but more than okay.
No, but it's frustrating. They have some new feature called groups, and Robert Scoble created a group, and he added me to it. Like, I didn't join it; he added me to it, which is flattering and everything. But then the next thing that happens is I've got all this junk mail in my mailbox that I didn't ask for, that I don't know why I'm getting it. And eventually, by reading enough messages, I go, "Oh, this is from Facebook." And then I'm able to go, "Oh, this is a group that someone signed me up for. Oh, I can edit my notifications, and then I'll stop getting this junk mail that I never asked for." But it's like, that's not a particularly, I mean, I love Facebook, but that's not a good implementation of features. If you're basically giving people the permission to annoy the hell out of their friends by spamming them with mail they didn't ask for. And again, it's nothing about Robert or anything. Nobody knew how this thing was going to work. But so I think rather than make a platform that for anyone, I mean, I like what you're doing. I mean, I have we make a list apart, but I didn't say this is a great magazine platform, and now I'm going to go sell it to, people who sell ladies' undergarments. It's like,
I wish you would, but yes,
that's next.
Okay, good.
So, Dan, I think we're almost out of time, but a lot of the people in the room, and I'm wondering this too. Do you have any? And this is the inevitable question, so I apologize ahead of time. Do you have any big plans for Dribble? Anything that you want to leak, so to speak, on this show? Anything you want to talk about here first, or anything people can look forward to that's not there yet?
So, I think the answer would be yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Oh.
Wow. Well, you heard it here first, folks. The answer is yes.
Yes, we absolutely. There's a lot of things that we're doing. There's not a lot that we can really say publicly, because we don't really know what's going to stick and what's not going to stick, and so we need to keep that in our locker room. And
can listeners become beta testers? Can listeners who are interested in finding out what you're working on help you beta test features that may or may not stick?
That's a possibility. We don't have a separate beta list people thing, but we have a Get Satisfaction account, and I would say if anybody has specific things that they want to see, that's the best place to go to request it, and that way everyone can see it and sort of chime in and be like, yeah, I want that too. So that would be great. And if there's anything that you feel could be better or missing or direction, that would be perfect. We'd want to hear it. We'd want to hear about it. But there's a lot of cool things that we're talking about doing, and it's tough to say what's going to, like I said, tough to say what's going to stick and what's not going to. So I don't want to promise things, get everyone excited, and then not do it, and everyone be upset. But
if you're going to
if we do, we'll be leaking it on Dribble, by the way. So.
If you of course. If you're looking to merge with a web design magazine, please don't forget your friends. That's all I'm saying.
I never will.
Well,
never will forget my friends.
We should probably wrap up, guys. But Dan, if people want to find out more about you, obviously Dribble with 3 B's, they can go to simplebits.com. They can follow you on Twitter at simplebits.
Simplebits.
Yep.
And
that's right.
Anything else? Any other places to go for you?
Where
are you speaking next? You're speaking somewhere soon.
Oh yeah, so I'm speaking at the last event part of the year in San Diego, which I'm really excited about. They're always phenomenal events, and that location in particular I've never been. So
and then that's it. You're taking the year off, correct?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm doing
speaking
actually
wise.
that and Build conference in Belfast right after that.
Right. And then
That's
2011
it.
is stay home,
Yep.
play with the kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna take some time and figure out what's next. You know, like what to talk about, and without repeating myself too much. So recharge a little bit.
Empires to plan for.
Well,
Something like that.
well deserved rest. All right, guys. Well, Dan Cederholm, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you on the show. Really enjoyed talking with
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, thank you, Dan and Jeffrey, for having me. I mean, it's an
Pleasure.
awesome show. I've been a
Thank
big
you.
fan. Always great guests. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jeffrey, as always, thanks for joining me today. And
What a pleasure. Yeah.
we'll close it up. Thanks to everybody who tuned in and listened in today.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Bye.
we'll see y'all again next week. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.